Welcome everyone to this webinar this afternoon for Migration Christian Conference. We're very excited to host this special book webinar. My name is Daniel Montañez, and I'm the director here of Migration Christian Conference. If this is your first time joining us, we want to give you a warm welcome. Today I'm here with Reverend Dr. Seth David Clark, who is the lead pastor of the First Baptist Church of National City. And the director of the pastoral team for the Border Church, an amazing ministry right there at the San Diego-Tijuana border. And he is also the author of the new book, Church at the Wall, Stories of Hope Along the San Diego Border. And yes, there Seth has the book there. Would you like to give a brief hello, Seth?
Hi, welcome. Bienvenidos.
Yes, bienvenidos a todos. So we will go ahead and get started. Before we jump in, just a quick couple of announcements. The way in which this Zoom session is going to go is we're going to hear Seth share about his book for a few minutes, and then I'll ask him a couple of questions about his book. And during that time, I encourage you all to begin thinking about questions yourselves. If there's anything you want to engage with him, this is a chance to engage with the author. Really, the purpose of this time is to celebrate with Seth on this amazing work and this accomplishment of putting this book together. I believe we will also have the opportunity to hear some stories as well of some people who were interviewed here in the book and listen to, a little bit from them. So we hope that it can be a dynamic time, a discussion and conversation. And with that, I believe we'll be good to go. One last thing, if you're not familiar already with the hand raising feature, I think we've all been on Zoom for almost 2 years now. But in case you're still learning, the reactions button at the bottom of the screen, you just click there, and then there's a raise hand button. And with that, we will unmute you, and you can go ahead and engage in the conversation. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it on to Seth.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone coming as I'm in a little bit of a church at the wall sandwich here behind me and in front of me. It's so good to just kind of have this webinar to celebrate the fact that the news is going out about what God's doing at the border. I'm pretty excited, honestly, because this border church that I've been part of for half a decade now, and I see Guillermo has gotten on. He's been a part of it for about a decade now. You'll hear more from him later. And I think some others might jump on, but this is just such a beautiful work, a work that every Sunday we gather as close as we can. Sometimes it's not very close, right? During the pandemic, it was mostly Zoom. Border Patrol still has not opened the area where we meet, which is called Friendship Park. It's been 2 years since we've been able to meet and touch fingertips, right, with a pinky kiss at the border fence. So we're outside the gate, if you will. And then this week it's flooded, so we have to walk through Borderfield State Park, about 1.5 to 2 mile hike, depending. But it's flooded so much we can't even get through. So I'm going to be on the other side of the Tijuana estuary, just kind of waving from a distance where I can see El Faro, the lighthouse, and have some sort of solidarity there, even if not super close. But every week, as close as we can, we come to this place that's so obviously a place of division, right? There's a border fence, and then a border enforcement zone, and then another border fence, and then a little bit more federal property that we can't even go on currently. And then we're outside of that area. So we're, about a football field away, American football, about a football field away from people we're doing church with, right? And every week we go there and we're reminded from God's word and in God's table, the table of the Lord, the communion table, we're reminded that there's this oneness that we have, this unity that we have in Christ that is bigger, more longstanding, and just greater than any sort of division that humans can come up with. Border walls will be around for a while, I imagine, but I don't think these border walls will be there forever. But God's kingdom, God's basileia, right? That's the Greek word for kingdom. God's reign, God's rule. That's around for eternity. And so we get a little bit of foretaste of that every week. And so this is an exciting ministry for me. Someone actually asked me last week. They said, "Okay, you wrote this book. You wrote this book. Does that mean you're done now? Right? You did your doctor of ministry dissertation on it. You have this book out. So it's kind of lonely work. Sometimes you have to hike through that valley all by yourself. You done?" And I said, "I don't think I'm quite done yet. I don't think I'm quite done yet." So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get the news out. So Church at the Wall, this book, it's stories of hope along the San Diego-Tijuana border. These stories, there are 8 different stories here. And if you have a book in front of you, you can open the table of contents. You can kind of see it. I got the background on. But yeah, so chapter 1 is about seeking the basileia, seeking the kingdom of God. Chapter 2 is about faith. Chapter 3 is about hope. Chapter 4 is about love. Chapter 5 is about accompaniment. Chapter 6 is about friendship. Chapter 7 is a short poem about transformation. And chapter 8 is about peace. Right? It's about peace. You hear some of these words, and if you know much about theology or the Christian tradition, a lot of these just kind of ring true. These are virtues, values, practices that the Border Church has. If you go to the Border Church website, you'll see these things: faith, hope, and love, right? Very Christian. Peace, right? Making peace. You'll see these things on our website, and hopefully you see these things in all kinds of Christian communities. The one that's unique, I think, to us, not that it's unique in terms of, the historic Christian tradition, but a value that we hold a little bit higher and we name is accompaniment, right? What does it mean to accompany people? If the church is a church on the move, especially here at the border, where there's a little bit of an obstacle, but there's these people, many of whom are devout believers. They're migrants, right? They're coming from some place, relocating to some other place, and right here in the Tijuana area, they're stuck south of the border, right? What does it mean to accompany them on the way? What does it mean to act as someone who's a bit of a tour guide, a bit of a friend, a bit of a travel companion? And yeah, so each chapter has a touch of that, and each one, I think, hopefully shows hope and shows the justice of God, and I think calls me, and I hope calls the Christian community, and calls our nations to a higher standard of justice, a higher standard of justice that's not just rooted in our wishes, although I have strong wishes for higher standards of justice, but rooted in Scripture, rooted in the tradition of Christianity, rooted in this basileia, this kingdom of God. So yeah, so that's the book, long and short. It's these stories, right? So these stories are paired with these values. So each chapter is a little bit about somebody who is a part of or has been touched by the work of the Border Church. And so, for instance, chapter 1 is about seeking the kingdom, and it's about the founder of the Border Church, John Fanistill, and how he sees glimmers of hope at the border, right? This place where maybe it's hard to see where the kingdom is at work, right? Because we see these other empires, these other kingdoms at work. Okay. Second chapter is about Maria Teresa, a friend who's basically a photo documentarian. What does it mean to be faithful, to have faith, as you display what's happening through photography and through these photos? Third chapter is about Carla, a Central American migrant, and how there's been a lot of hurt in her life because of border policies, but also there's a lot of hope still there, right? I was amazed when I interviewed her, how much she was just filled with hope in God, hope that God had something better, right? Not necessarily something that was going to be the American dream, but something better, something good for her and her family. Chapter 4 is about Tanya. Tanya is someone who's at the Border Church pretty much every week, and Tanya is a deported mom. She got deported and taken away from her daughter. So what does it mean to have love? What does it mean to have love while separated? And how does God have a similar kind of love for us? Chapter 5 is about our friend Guillermo right there. He's a bus driver at heart, but he's also our pastor on the Mexico side. Not just a bus driver because he likes to drive big vehicles, and he's really good at it, by the way. A couple of weeks ago, I was down in Tijuana, and he had to park this trailer and everything, and I was amazed. Just within millimeters of like this side and that side, and he pulled it off beautifully, just beautifully, right? And so he likes driving the bus, but also he likes taking people and accompanying them wherever they're at, showing them this is what God's doing. This is what the options are for you. This is how you can connect. This is how you can have friendship and hope here at the border. Chapter 6 is about my friend, Dan Watman. And what does it mean for a person who's not necessarily religious or spiritual to be involved in this work, this Christian work? He's kind of there, he's kind of on the sidelines, but he also has a lot of these same desires for justice and hope on the borderlands. So what does it mean for there to be friendship there? And what does it mean to partner with people from different traditions or from no tradition? Chapter 7 is about transformation. It's just a short 3-verse poem that I wrote about my transformation at the border. And that's maybe, I don't know, the title of the poem is Beyond Awakening, right? We talk about wokeness, or at least on part of the political spectrum, they talk about wokeness and how it's like bad or whatever. But at its heart, what it used to mean is being awake to what's happening. And what does it mean to be more than just awake to what's happening? What does it mean to be awakened to the realities of injustice and moved into action and transformation beyond just knowledge, right? And then chapter 8 is about my friend Robert and how he, himself a deportee, is fighting for peace, especially with deported veterans. So I don't know if you all know, but if you've served in the United States military and you get into a little bit of trouble afterwards with the law or whatever, they'll deport you. And that's happened with hundreds of servicemen and women who served the United States of America, right? And so these people consider the US their home, and then they get kicked out. And Robert's been waging peace and trying to find peace in his own heart along the way. And I'm grateful in the epilogue of the book, I was able to say that my friend, the deportee, is no longer a deportee. He just in November was able to come back to the US after about a decade of being displaced. So there's a lot of hope in this book, and a good bit of theology. And someone who was helping me write it, she called me an excellent raconteur, which I had to double check the meaning of, but like storyteller, right? I remember the band, Jack White had a band called the Raconteurs, right? And so I kind of knew the concept, but apparently, at least according to this friend who looked over the manuscript, the stories were pretty decent. So I do recommend the book.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us a brief overview. I love the way in which you integrate these theological truths and these virtues that exist throughout the Christian scriptures and interweave it with, in a sense, what is a qualitative research approach, really kind of an ethnography perspective of listening to people's interviews. I think that is something that is so necessary in doing this type of work, because oftentimes the type of work that goes into writing a book is oftentimes divorced from the community itself. Therefore, that the questions that people answer are completely irrelevant to what's actually taking place, or not reflective of the realities that are actually happening within the community. So actually listening to the stories of the people themselves is, I think, a very powerful tool that you use for this. And I think I just applaud you on that. That's a wonderful That's a wonderful approach. Now, with that, I know that also many challenges come just to writing a book like this and listening to the stories on the ground. So, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges you faced in writing this book, and around recording the stories of immigrants at the border?
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually gonna take one step back and talk about that ethnography piece. And there in ethnography, right, you're the participant observer, okay? But within ethnographic theology, there's a term that goes around a little bit. So at least one I picked up on, it's called participant witness, right? You give witness, you bear witness to what's going on. You participate, you're part of it, but you're bearing witness to what God is doing through this community here on earth. And so when I think about what this book is, that's what it is. It's my participation. I'm, fully on board with what's going on, and it's me bearing witness to the hope we have in Jesus Christ here in San Diego-Tijuana. That God's kingdom might come, that the Basileia might come on the border. So yeah, but you did ask a question, so I'll go ahead and answer that question. Challenges. I mean, one of the challenges is, okay, the border church sees many migrants. Every Sunday after border church, with a partner organization, Via International, we have lunch, and there's about 100 lunches served every Sunday, right? And so we've seen thousands and thousands of migrants, and it's not a traditional church where we take down, attendance and things like that. And so we don't know where all of these thousands of people are. Some, I'm sure, in the US, some are still in Mexico, some probably had to go back home. In fact, I know that. So part of it is just figuring out, okay, who is the right person or persons to kind of track down, and thinking about the border church and its influence. So luckily for me, or unluckily, I don't know, probably luckily, this book is actually based on the dissertation I wrote for my doctor of ministry through Columbia Theological Seminary. And so there were a lot of parameters as far as word count and how much space to give to this or that. And so I had pretty strict limitations. So I knew I only could pick a certain number of people. And so I just kind of went with it. And then with this book, I interviewed a few more to kind of round out the stories, and just give a broader and hopefully deeper understanding of what the border church is and who it influences and who's part of it. But yeah, so starting off, it was, okay, how do I go about interviewing these people, and who do I pick, and things like that. But that was simple enough once I got into the swing of it, because a lot of these people are people I know, and if I don't know them, I know people who know them, right? So there's this connection. It's really interesting when you're doing this kind of work where the people you're trying to help and walk alongside of are so displaced. It's pretty easy, and you got to be careful so you're not kind of influencing in the wrong way, of course, and not overusing power, things like that. But it's amazing how receptive people are, right? And so if I don't know them, by virtue of the fact that I know somebody who does know them and has done something good for them, they're pretty open with someone like me. Again, that's a lot of power, so you have to wield it with a lot of responsibility. But not quoting Spider-Man, but almost, or Spider-Man's uncle, I guess. But yeah, you gotta be careful with that. So narrowing down that selection, that was an issue. And then just, like anyone who's writing things, it's the slog of editing, right? So you write it, and for me, I was basically doing an 80% rewrite of something a little bit more academic. So it's just editing, right? I have this draft, now my next draft, and I'm somebody who works a lot better if it's in collaboration. So just finding the right people who I can collaborate with. So it's just that kind of thing. And then too, just I'm kind of busy, right? So like setting aside the time to write. The early part of the pandemic, it was just reorganizing life around this new reality. And then we've got more and more to the pandemic, and then it was May 2020 when I graduated with my doctorate of ministry. And then in the summer of 2020 when I got the book contract. And then April 2021 was my deadline for my first draft of the manuscript, which was supposed to be like a pretty solid draft, right? Not just a rough draft. And right, so how am I going to do this when I have 2 kids, when I have a church in National City and this border ministry and whatever else is going on? So I basically just took a writer's retreat, and during that time hotels were cheap. They've shot up a lot. I don't know if you noticed, but travel has gotten really expensive over the last few months, but they're really cheap. So I got a cheap hotel in a nice part of town and just wrote and edited. So that's the thing. And I know some people out here are gifted and skilled and experienced writers, but some people probably watching either live or in the recording, they probably want to write. So just carve out that time. I think that's super important because God has something to say and you might be part of that too. Yeah, so that's, I guess, those challenges, both in terms of the mechanics of writing, but also in terms of finding stories of immigrants and deportees and people like that.
Thank you so much, Seth. One last question, then we'll actually have an opportunity to hear from 1 or 2 people who are actually interviewed for this book. I encourage everyone to begin to write down any questions you might have as well, because after that we'll be moving to the Q&A. So, Seth, there are many books. I think in the past 15 years, there's been a real increase in books that have to do with theology and migration and the church and migration. So with your book in particular, what is maybe one main idea that you would want people to take away from this idea that you would like to contribute to the larger conversation that is taking place around immigration in our world today?
Yeah, I think it's hopeful engagement with justice, right? So it's stories of hope. I think in this sphere, kind of theology of migration, most people are not giving up on hope. But if you look at the wider kind of social justice space, a lot of people are not hopeful, right? And that comes out in a lot of anger. Okay, and that's understandable, because when you're faced with so much injustice, it's pretty hard to get jaded and get just filled with a lot of negative emotions and a lot of negative expectations. And then, kind of on the flip side, this is probably where more of society is at. It's just kind of this complacency about the whole thing. And I'm not saying that hopeful engagement is somewhere in the middle. I don't think it is. I think it's recognizing injustice. It's recognizing the needs of humanity, the spiritual and physical needs. And it's also recognizing that there's a bigger story and we're a part of it. And that the end of that story, at least in the Christian tradition, is something that's just beautiful and awesome. And, the scriptures say that God will be all in all, and there's this beautiful picture of the heavens and the earth coming together in the New Jerusalem, all this beautiful stuff, right? This is very hopeful stuff, right? And somewhere there's in the middle is us here on earth with this injustice. But yet I think this hopeful engagement with justice is something I hope people can take away, right? Because here in this book, like I mentioned before, chapter 3 is Carla, and she's a Central American migrant who crossed in the US and was detained, and we can read more about it in the book, but was treated very harshly, so much so that her child died, very harshly. So in it all, there's hope, for her, right? And what a testimony that is, right? What a witness that is. And then on the call now, and I think she's going to share in a little bit, is Tanya. Tanya is a deported mom, right? And she talks about how, you know, life gets pretty hard. Life gets pretty hard because she's away from her daughter, and she's in a different place than where she grew up. She grew up in LA, and now she's in Tijuana, so they even make fun of her Spanish accent and things like that. And so life's hard. But every Sunday, you know, she's around people who understand what it's like to be displaced, and she's hearing a message that rings true for her. And there's this sense of joy. There's this sense that everything's going to be okay, right? It's a sense of hope. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing. And then for me too, right? Hopeful engagement, right? That's something, if I'm talking about it or saying this is important, then I think it's something that probably should be important for me. And so when I think about what does that look like, I think about how every Sunday for me, communion, Lord's Supper, Eucharist, a bunch of different names, breaking of the bread, has been a really big part. It was part of my tradition growing up. I grew up Plymouth Brethren, and all along the way, it's just been a big part of my own personal and corporate worship. And so to be able to practice that and experience that that ordinance or sacrament or whatever you want to call it every week, proclaiming God's unity in a place of division, right? Proclaiming God's beauty in a place where there's some beauty, but especially on the US side, it's not very beautiful. At least when you're looking at that wall. When you look to the side and you see the ocean, it's beautiful. When you look and you see the estuary, it's beautiful. But when you look at the wall, it's not so beautiful. But there we are, and in between the wall and me is the bread and the cup. And in partaking that, we're proclaiming the Lord's death, but we're also proclaiming, I think, the Lord's resurrection. And so there's that hope in resurrection. So that for me, I think is huge in keeping me hopeful as I keep engaging at the border.
Thank you, Seth. Well, let's go ahead and turn to actually listen to these stories of some people who are joining us. We've set aside some time for each person to share, maybe for about 5 minutes each, a little bit about their story. Seth, would you like to introduce them and maybe choose who you'd like to go first?
Yeah, so I'm on my iPad. So I see the two I see here that I talked to are Guillermo and Tanya. So maybe Guillermo, you could go first. And what I was wondering is, I basically asked this question of Guillermo and Tanya is, what do you think people, especially people far away, should know about you? And what do you think they should know about the Border Church?
Well, thank you. This is awesome to be here and participate with your project. That also is an amazing job. My name is Guillermo Navarrete. I am, well, someone asked me, where you came from? Well, I came from the sea because I am a merchant marine. I was a merchant marine. So my last trip was 45 years ago and land here in Tijuana. So since that time, I'm here.
Thanks, Guillermo. What do you think people should know about the Border Church? What's something, if there's one thing you could tell people about the Border Church, what would it be?
Well, I was a pastor inside the church, inside the temple. With this opportunity 11 years ago, I went to the church with no walls, no roof, and being in a social place for me connect me with Jesus, because the last 3 years of his ministry, he went to the church, he went to the temple once in a while. But where he wasn't, he was on the street, he was on the plaza, he was on the border church. So connect me with Jesus, the ministry of Jesus.
Thank you, Guillermo. That's so true. And that's what Guillermo said. He hasn't changed his tune. That's what Guillermo said when I interviewed him too. So you can read about that in the book. Thank you, Guillermo. Tanya, what about you? Can you say a little bit about yourself, Tanya? And yeah, what should people know about you, and what should people know about the Border Church?
Hi, first of all, I want to say hi to everybody. I'm sorry it was a little late. And thank you so much, Seth, for the invite and for writing my story at this book. So amazing. A little bit about me. Well, I was 3 when I went to the US, and I got deported when I was 24, and it's been a pretty harsh experience because the change of cultural lifestyles and the educational differences that has created for most of us who had been taken to at a young age to the US. We call this childhood arrivals, a project that we started here in Playas. Has been drastic for me. You know, it has made me want to create more awareness every day. And this is why I talk about my story. And this is why I let everybody know what's going on in regards to being a deported mom, not only a childhood arrival, but more or less, you know, the separation of families, which is what's happening nowadays. And that could continue happening because of the DACA. And most of us, you know, can get separated even more from family members as it is. And I think that's something that I want everyone to know about me, because I'm going to continue fighting and continue letting everybody know that laws need to get changed, and that we need to fix things and make this possible, and how much we suffer, you know, alone by not having these doors and everything that Seth talks about in the book. You know, it's real, it's there, and we need to make a change, because there's a lot of families who do not see each other. There's a lot of families who are going through grief, and I just want to continue creating awareness. So that's one thing that I really want everyone to know, that I'm going to continue my activism, and I'm going to continue pushing forward for everybody else. And about the church, about the Border Church, well, it's been like the biggest and nicest and experience for me, not only spiritually but also socially. I think it has made me grow in so many ways. You know, like I said, the changes and the learning, everything that happens in the border, and the changes of lifestyle that we all go through, you know, the educational and family situations that we all live day by day, has brought me to the Border Church in many ways. You know, I've gained family, I've gained support, I've gained a lot of hope, and nonetheless the faith, you know. So we're there every Sunday. I'm the host, by the way, on the Facebook Live. I hope you guys can join us there at 1:30 on the Border Church page. But I think it gives a lot of hope to everyone, unity, solidarity, and more or less being resilient, you know, to a better life, and that hope of reuniting back with the family. I think Border Church provides that for every single one of us. And for those who are on the outside, they provide a lot of love, family, unionship, you know, and it shows us how important it is to be with our family members. I think that's what the Border Church identifies for me, you know, that the importance of family, and how we're supposed to have God in us. Thank you.
Thank you so
Tanya.
much. Yeah, thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Guillermo, for being present here and having the courage to share your stories, and just the blessing that the Border Church has been to you all. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. At this time, I think we can open it up for Q&A. If anybody here has any questions for Seth and wants to participate in this conversation, I invite you now just to raise your hand. And I see Suzanne, you raised your hand, so let me go ahead and, oh, I think I lost you. Are you still here? Oh no, she was waving goodbye. That might have been the difference. Okay. Any questions? Okay, yes, Jessica, let me go ahead and unmute you.
I'm just curious if this is being published in Spanish. We have a little Mexican community here in Minnesota, and I would love to bring them a book to share. And I'm just wondering if we have a Spanish version at all.
It's not out yet. Guillermo is amazing, and he always has contacts that are surprising to me. And so he has a professional translator who said she's going to start working on it later this month. And I'm talking to the publisher to make sure, you know, all the copyright stuff's good to go. But yeah, hopefully soon. Not yet, but hopefully soon. And just keep an eye out, borderchurch.org, and then we're also on Facebook and things like that, so that you'll see the Spanish one. And then maybe we can have this conversation in Espanol in the future.
Sounds great.
That would be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. Any other questions? Feel free to engage. Now is the time to have a conversation. Yes, Hector, let me give you unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Now I was curious because I know in recent years that they have closed Friendship Park, and how has that affected the border church? Because I know that there was a group that normally would show up on the San Diego side and kind of have communion there at the wall. But it's been a couple of years now, perhaps, that the Friendship Park has been closed. Has there been any kind of word as to when that will open or how that's affected the border church overall?
Oof, good question. Yeah, so it's addressed in the book a little bit, but not as much, right? Because it seemed when I was writing it, still in the middle of the pandemic, and so we were under the belief that when Borderfield State Park, which was the adjacent area, opens back up, Friendship Park would open back up. But that's not the case, right? It's been closed for 2 years. Friendship Park, the space of binational meeting, right there where San Diego and Tijuana meet, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And it's been tough. It has been tough, right? Because we still had a fence between us, but we used to be able to put our hands up against the wall. On the US side, we used to be able to touch pinky fingers, you know, as a sign of peace, right? But we can't do that now. So it's made things perhaps a little less hopeful in the moment, but also I think our resilience is still pretty strong. In terms of when is the Border Patrol going to open up Friendship Park again, they don't have any plans to. They don't have any plans to open it up anytime in the near future. My colleague, John Fanistil, he has had an exchange with Border Patrol, and recently they basically said, we are understaffed, there are a lot of needs, we only have staffing for what we need to do, not what we want to do. So bracketing whether or not they actually want to open Friendship Park, because in a lot of the Border Patrol thinking that's an enforcement zone and we're a little bit in the way. But bracketing that question, you know, they are saying no, we don't have the staff power to do that. So it's going to be a minute before it opens back up. So what you can do is, you know, you can do those typical activist things and write letters and call Congress people and things like that. But as an administrative, right, so under the administrative branch, Border Patrol has a lot of leeway, right? And there's not a lot of transparency like there would be through other kind of elected processes. So it's tough. It is tough. Thank you for that question.
Okay, and let's hear from Maria Arovalle.
Yeah, is there any reason, what is the reason that the Border Park is closed or Friendship Park? And do you get any hostility from certain groups of people?
So currently what they're telling us, what the Border Patrol is telling us, is it all has to do with staffing. Okay, so the Border Patrol in San Diego for years has had public relations officers or agents, right? But their staffing needs are such that they don't even have that filled right now, right? So there's no sort of public relations at all from Border Patrol, which is, those are the people they would use to staff Friendship Park. So their thinking is only operations right now.
And do you get any negative feelings from certain groups of people when you go there, or
that was
general?
the second part of your question. Yeah, we do. It's most people are kind. Most people are friendly. Most people actually, honestly, to say it's like, what's going on? Most people are just really curious. Okay. A lot of people come to that corner of the United States to figure out what's happening at the border and just to kind of get a look at that big fence. So they don't know much about it at all. So a lot of times we're like the unofficial docents of the area. This is how it used to be. This is how it is now. This is what we're doing.
So you're actually educating people about...
Yeah, we try to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Does anyone have any other questions for Seth?
I would add, if you want to ask Guillermo or Tanya questions, that'd be okay too. They are prepared, I think.
Yes, Guillermo.
Got it? Well, one comment, it is that in 11 years, we are spreading the word, spreading the love of Jesus, and through many people. Talking about the migrant people, right now they are in US. And they also spread the opportunity to be at the border and visit their relatives from the side of Mexico. So that kind of accompaniment make the point to be at the border, church, is the family reunification. And that's the main thing that we do there. And when the people talks about the experience there to their own families from Central America or Mexico, they want to be there. So they spread how they can be in the American side, and then from the Mexican side they came together, and the family reunification succeed. That's the main point of the border church. The other one is the accompaniment. The book talks too much about it. Accompaniment is not just the human help. It's not just the food, the clothes, whatever. So we do more. The accompaniment provide us the exact information to find a job, find a place to live, and wait for the opportunity to cross to United States legally. That's my comment.
Thanks, Guillermo.
Seth, I have a question, and maybe we can close off this time with this. If there was something that, because I know we have many pastors as well as church leaders that are present here, if there's one way in which you would encourage pastors and lay ministers to begin to engage in the work of advocating for migrant communities, what is one thing in which you would encourage people to begin this type of work, and if it's their first time being exposed to these types of conversations?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's a lot of different regions across the U.S. and beyond, right? But most regions do have some sort of immigrant or migrant populace there, right? And so if you have people around you who are migrants, I would say ask them, don't just thrust your will on them, but ask them if they could use a partner, right? If they could use that accompaniment that Guillermo's talking about once they're around. And that could be, I think, a good way for leaders and communities to get to know, to get to be participant witnesses as well. And once you know kind of the needs of that community and can maybe address some of those, then I think that there's like a pipeline back, because those migrants probably have family members and friends who are also trying to cross. And so I would say start local and kind of trace back to where it leads you. You know, for me, local is the border, right? For some of us, local is the border, but for others, you know, if you're in Minnesota or Wyoming or New York or something, it might not be. So start local and then kind of work your way back and see how you can be a part. You know, do that people to people work. There are other ways, but that's, I think, a good one.
Great, thank you so much, Seth. Thank you for just blessing us with this resource and writing it and making it accessible to us all. It's been great talking and learning more about your new book. And thank you to everyone who has joined here today. I encourage you to pick up a copy of this book. We have placed it here in the chat section as well, so you can go ahead and go online to do so. So that's available for you. And also, just a couple of announcements. We had a book raffle for this call, and the two people who actually won are Robert Vivar and Ernest Aniche. So they will go ahead and be getting a free copy of this book, Church at the Wall. And yeah, so this recording has been recorded. It will be placed online for those who would like to go back and watch it, or if you'd like to send it to a friend, and just a blessing that this conversation has been, that it will be made available to you. A last announcement, for those of you guys who are interested in the work of Migration Christian Conference, we've put a link for our website there. We will be having a summer conference in July, where we will be continuing to engage in this work of theology and migration. And we love connecting with people like Seth and highlighting just the good work that they're doing. And Seth, I see that somebody actually asked for your contact information. So if you could put that in the chat section or share it however you'd like, that'd be great. So and I see a question here, where will we find the link to the recording? That will be emailed out to you, as well as it will be posted on our social media pages. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and the recordings will be found on all of those outlets. So with that, I believe this concludes our webinar. This concludes our time together. Let's go ahead and give Seth a round of applause. Thank you for the good work that you've done. And on behalf of Migration Christian Conference, thank you everybody for joining this afternoon. Have a great rest of your days, and we hope to see you next time. So take care.
Everybody, thank you so much. God bless. Dios os bendiga.